So in 1977, November 1977, Srila Prabhupada left the planet, and all of us were wondering what's going to happen next. How is ISKCON going to continue after his departure? So what happened was the leaders of ISKCON, and Jayatirtha was our leader, Jayatirtha James Immel. He was the what was called the Governing Body Commission Leader, GBC, of England. And he came back from the Mayapur meetings. They had a meeting in early 1978, and they said, Jayatirtha is the appointed guru successor to Prabhupada. He is now a pure devotee. He is the Messiah of England. And his zone. He had a zone which was called, they began being called the zonal gurus. Tamal had a zone like Texas, and Harikesh had a zone like Russia and East Europe, and so on and so forth. So right away, the first problem they had was they began to say that gurus have zones of, geographical influence. There's the guru for this zone, the guru for that zone. So it didn't make a lot of sense to people right away. Right away people said, wait a minute, how can we have a guru for a geographical area? This has never been done. The guru is called Jagat Guru. Jagat means the universe. So the guru is the guru of the universe. Now all of a sudden the guru is just, restricted to a certain geographical area. So this was the first problem they had. Jayatirtha declared himself to be the guru of England, and so people said, well, wait a minute, how can he be just the guru only of England, and why isn't he not the guru in Russia? Why isn't he not the guru in India? He's only the guru over here. Anyway, so there was many problems with their declaration, but this was the first problem that people began to discuss. Well, how come Jayatirtha is the guru for here, and Harikesh is the guru? Why would Prabhupada make such a system? Prabhupada was following the tradition of Vaishnavism, and there's never been in the tradition of Vaishnavism, there's never been a history where you had the guru for the zone. So we began to wonder about that. At the same time, Jayatirtha had a history of having different kinds of problems with, having illicit sex. He had apparently had some illicit sex with some woman in Los Angeles who was married or had a boyfriend. I don't remember the story, but anyway, the point is that some man got very upset that Jayatirtha was having sex with his woman. So Jayatirtha had a history of, let's say, he couldn't control himself all the time. And so this was well known, that Jayatirtha had some kind of problems. And so how could he become the Acharya all of a sudden? Here's a guy who, was now married, but who had problems in the past. And plus, the leaders of ISKCON had all kinds of problems. They had all kinds of fighting amongst themselves, and they were falling down left, right, and center anyway. A lot of the big leaders like Bali Mardan and Madhavisa and so on were already having problems. Why all of a sudden were they going to stop having all these problems? This also didn't make any sense. They're having problems all along up until 1978, but now all of a sudden the problems are going to cease. We're never going to see another problem here because these guys are pure devotees. This just doesn't make any sense. So, again, we're wondering, why would Prabhupada say that people who were having problems left, right, and center, who were falling down left, right, and center, were now his successors? And if Prabhupada had intended to make Jayatirtha his successor, why was this never announced while he was here? Why didn't we all know? Why weren't we ready for this announcement? If Prabhupada had said, I want these 11 people to be my successors, he would have talked about that, he would have discussed that, he would have set this up, he would have notified everybody. Everybody in the movement would have known about it, so there'd be a smooth transition. Everybody would just accept these 11 as his successors because he would have wrote a letter saying these 11 are going to be worshipped as the sum total of the demigods, Krishna's pure devotee successors after I'm gone. This is the system that I want to establish. But he never announced that. No one ever heard about that. So this was another question. Why wouldn't Prabhupada have made a big announcement and described all this situation in detail to the mass of devotees, so that all the devotees would be ready to accept this appointment of successors. But no one ever heard about it, until just after Prabhupada left, at a time when we couldn't confirm that he had made this appointment. We just had to take the word of the appointees. The appointees claimed that they had been appointed. We had no way of verifying that. So I was one of the people who began to ask some questions about this. I said, where's the evidence? Where's the tape? Where is the, documentation from Prabhupada that he had appointed these 11 successors? And I began to ask people like Vichitravirya. Vichitravirya was the president of the temple there in England, and I said, I'd like to see some documentation. And I kept badgering him about this. Eventually he showed me some really badly photocopied couple sheets of paper with just, a few paragraphs of writing on it, where Prabhupada had allegedly or supposedly appointed these people. And I said, well, where's the whole tape? Where's the context? How do we... This doesn't sound like it's an appointment of successors, completely here by itself. This seems to be missing a lot of pieces. At the same time, Prabhupada had always said, gurus are not appointed. He ridiculed the idea that, there'd be an appointed acharya, and he did this repeatedly. He said the guru is not appointed, the guru is self-effulgent. The guru manifests by his spiritual potency. He does not manifest by some kind of ecclesiastical decree. And so Prabhupada had wrote many things about, the ecclesiastical gurus of India, which he called the Smartas, the Smarta Brahmanas. And he said the hereditary and ecclesiastical guru system is bogus. It's not authorized. So why would he all of a sudden stop, after 50 years of criticizing the ecclesiastical and appointed guru idea, why would he all of a sudden stop criticizing that and adopt that very system himself? This also did not make a lot of sense. Now, on top of that, Prabhupada's own guru had a mission in India called the Gaudiya Math, and in the Gaudiya Math they appointed a guru. And Prabhupada repeatedly condemned this whole situation. He said they appointed a guru, and then they appointed more gurus, and he said another man comes to become guru, another man comes, as each one falls down, another one is appointed. And he said in this way they killed their guru to become gurus. So he was very critical of this idea of gurus being appointed. And Prabhupada had made many warnings about this in his letters, in his conversations, and in his private discussions with his own disciples and devotees. When we were in India, he very often criticized the Gaudiya Math and all the problems that they had with their appointed gurus. It's interesting, though, that Prabhupada had told Guru Kripa and Yasodhanandan, do not make my mission into another Gaudiya Math or Catholic church after I'm gone. So if you notice, the Gaudiya Math had appointed gurus, and these gurus were, just artificially rubber-stamped, and the Catholic Church votes in the Pope. So they have an ecclesiastical system for voting in the Pope. So Prabhupada was very opposed to that. He says, do not make my mission into another ecclesiastically appointed Pope or Guru, figurehead situation. This is not good. And Prabhupada had also said that the Pope is just a figurehead. He doesn't really have the potency of a pure devotee. He's just, a rubber-stamped artificial authority. So this is commonly what Prabhupada would say. Rubber-stamped guru, artificially appointed guru, this type of thing. So it just absolutely made no sense that he would reverse course after criticizing this for so long, for decades. Now, all of a sudden, he's in favor of ecclesiastically rubber-stamped appointed gurus. This really did not look good. But, so what I began to think right away was, wow, these people are trying to make Prabhupada look bad. They're trying to make it look like Prabhupada authorized this, rubber stamping of guru process. So really, it's like an attack on Prabhupada. Just never mind all the other, avenues of attack that were going on against Prabhupada because of this, but just the mere fact that they were saying Prabhupada makes mistakes. Prabhupada is making a big mistake. He is appointing pure devotees. He's saying these 11 people are the residents of Krishna Loka. They're pure. They're as pure as God. They're as good as Jesus. They can absorb sins like Jesus, etc., etc. When they were clearly not qualified to be in that post. So it looked like Prabhupada made a mistake, a huge mistake. And this issue has never really been rectified. It's now almost the year 2013, and the appointed 11 are still considered to be appointed gurus. No one's ever come out and said, no, these people were never made gurus in the first place. They're still strutting around, calling themselves His Divine Grace, this, that, and the other. They're being worshipped. They have disciples. They're getting money. They're getting Guru Dakshin. They're getting... their pictures are being put on altars. They're still being worshipped, and all that kind of thing. They've never really come clean and said, you know what? Prabhupada did not appoint 11 successors or any successors. Now, what did Prabhupada really want? He wanted a managing body, which he called a governing body commission, a GBC. He wanted people to manage his institution. He didn't want the managers to become the messiahs. So if you have a church and it's being managed by a council of churches and some priests and, elders and other things like that, what happens if one of those elders or priests all of a sudden says, you know what, I'm Jesus. I'm as good as Jesus. I'm the successor to Jesus. Well, that person causes all kinds of problems. That's generally called a cult in Christianity. And if we look at David Koresh and some of the other cults that have developed where the layman type person artificially telescopes himself to the post of Messiah, then we have a lot of problems. Jim Jones, the big suicide cult, and so many things. In other words, you have a layman posing as a absolute. A person on the relative plane is posing as absolute plane, and this causes chaos of all types, because then the person on the relative plane, everything he says is considered as absolute, and he can't make any mistakes. He's infallible. He's as good as God. Well, what happens when he starts making mistakes and someone points that out? Then whoever points that out is blaspheming a pure devotee and all kinds of things like that. So it sets up actually a very violent atmosphere, because as soon as anybody challenges or questions, then they are, challenging God's walking and talking spokesperson on earth. And this also happened in the Gaudiya Math. In the Gaudiya Math, in the 1930s, they had appointed a guru. He turned out to have homosexual tendencies. He was also chasing a prostitute. He had a lot of problems. And anyone who pointed out those problems was in danger. Was in danger of being physically assaulted or killed, which happened. Some of the dissenters were killed. And Prabhupada told us that whole story, that in the Gaudiya Math, some of the people who dissented from the appointed Acharya, so-called appointed Acharya, were treated violently. So this is, again, why would Prabhupada give us all these warnings about the Gaudiya Math and about violence in the Gaudiya Math and so many things? And he kept saying Gaudiya Math did not institute a governing body system. They made false gurus instead. So why would he change all that and drop the governing body and start a false guru idea? Again, did not make sense, did not tally with his statements. But all this was done very quickly. They just said, we're appointed, and anybody who disagrees is out of here. So it was like a smash and grab operation. We're the appointed successors. Anyone who challenges, we're going to kick them out. So this whole thing was done very quickly, and so then they created a wave of intimidation. Anybody who disagreed, anybody who challenged, anybody who doubted. If you doubted that Jayatirath was a pure devotee, well, you were out. You were out the door. You had to go. That was the situation. It was very repressive. But they knew that. They knew that there would be doubters, so they knew that they were going to have to crack down. They were going to have to make a sub-violent culture in ISKCON to smack down anybody who challenged. So Pradyumna challenged, and he was kicked out. Yasodhanandan challenged, he was kicked out. A devotee named Veda Vyas in, I think, Sweden was challenging. He was kicked out. So the word got around that the challengers were dealt with very severely. There's severe repercussions to doubting this appointment of gurus, which in fact never happened. Prabhupada did not appoint successors. He only appointed managers. He said at best, these people are managers. That's all. And that's why they didn't give us the appointment tape, because on the appointment tape itself, that is what Prabhupada says. He says, when they deviate, they'll have to be replaced. Okay, wait a minute. When they deviate, they'll have to be replaced. That means they're not gurus. That means they're just managers. So managers can be deviating and replaced, but not messiahs or acharyas. So that is why they didn't give us the tape, because the tape itself, if you listen to the tape, there is no appointment of gurus there. No names are mentioned. The 11 names are not mentioned on this so-called appointment tape. So it does not appoint gurus even on the tape itself. But again, if Prabhupada had appointed gurus on May 28, 1977, then everybody would have been talking about that. That would have been the biggest discussion going on in ISKCON on May 29th, the very next day. Everyone would have been saying, oh, Prabhupada just appointed 11 successors. But no one was discussing that in May, or June, or July, or August, or September, or October, and not all the way up till the time Prabhupada departed in November. No one was discussing this alleged so-called appointment. So, therefore, it's pretty clear there was no real evidence for it, because if they had evidence, they would have discussed that. They would have brought it forward when Prabhupada was here, when that evidence could be verified and discussed and organized. Now, in England, we had the Bhakti program, which was headed up by Danavir and Vipramukhya, and they started this whole process of how you have to worship these 11. And the Bhakti programs were going on around the world, so they were like organizing, they were writing the documentation for how these 11 would be worshipped. But one day I met with them in the hallway, and they were looking at a picture of Jayatirtha in a magazine, and they were laughing, and I said, what's that? And they says, oh, look, Jayatirtha's putting his picture in this magazine, but only his picture's there. He needs to put in the picture of all the 11 guys. He's making it look like he's the only guru in ISKCON when he should be putting all. I said, oh, so every time one of them has a picture somewhere, all the 11 pictures have to have to be there at the same time. So in other words, they were ridiculing Jayatirtha. Jayatirtha is a fool. Jayatirtha is an idiot. Jayatirtha is doing the wrong things. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, wait a second. Jayatirtha is the sum total of the demigods. He's advising the demigods. He's a resident of Krishna Loka, and Danavir and Vipramukhya are now his authorities. They're people who can ridicule and poke fun at what the sum total of the demigods is doing. So Danavir and Vipramukhya are higher than the Messiah. Jesus is walking around being worshipped by people, and Danavir and Vipramukhya are laughing and poking fun at Jesus. Oh, look at Jesus is being worshipped in a stupid way. Jesus doesn't know what he's doing. Well, wait a minute. No. Why are you saying he's like a Jesus in the first place? You, Danavir and Vipramukhya, on the one hand, promoting Jayatirtha as a Messiah, and on the other hand, in the back room, you're laughing and joking that Jayatirtha is a dipstick. So I'm not sure what to compare this to, but I'm sure that used car dealers, when they see some little old lady come on the lot, and they've got a car on the lot that used to be a taxi, and it's got 490,000 miles on it, and they just put a new paint job on it and turned the clock back on the speedometer so it says 20,000 miles, and they sell it to this little old lady, they're just laughing their head off. Yeah, we just cheated this little old lady over here. So, in other words, ISKCON became like a society of liars. Everybody knew, the Prabhupada devotees knew that Jayatirtha was not really a pure devotee. They all knew that, but they told the new people, when a new person would come to the temple, they all agreed to the lie, which I called the big lie, just plain and simple, the big lie. They all agreed to lie. They said, we're all going to promote Jayatirtha as a pure Messiah, even though he's not. Now, this is something Prabhupada warned about repeatedly, over and over, constantly. Do not make ISKCON into a Kaitava dharma. Kaitava means cheating religion. At the very beginning of his Bhagavatam, Prabhupada says you have to kick out cheating religions before you can read this Bhagavatam. In other words, if you're participating in a cheating religion, or you're creating a cheating religion, you are not eligible to understand anything further, because you're cheating. So the whole ISKCON became a cheating religion, and they knew it was a cheating religion. Donavir knew, Vipramukhya knew, Vichitravirya knew, Bhajahari knew. All the senior devotees in England, they all knew that Jayatirtha is not really a pure devotee. But when new people came, they would brainwash these new people. Oh, yes, Jayatirtha, oh my gosh, he's the Messiah. He's the anointed one. He can absorb all your sins. He's as good as Jesus. He is God's spokesperson on earth. So they began to promote this big, big lie. And, different people have different roles in this and responsibilities in this, but I really put Donavir and Vipramukhya at the real top of the list of the main people promoting the cheating, because they were writing documents, they were writing all to the other ISKCON centers saying, we have to worship these people as pure devotees, and they set up this whole elaborate system for worshiping these 11. And so the people who systematize the lie are worse than just, the people who went along with it, like the pot washer who just said, he was reluctant. I'm going to promote Jayatirtha as a pure devotee. I don't really want to, but, if I have to do that to keep my position in the ISKCON, I'll do that. So what happened really was that in order to keep your position in the ISKCON society, if you wanted to stay in the ISKCON society, you had to go along with the big lie, or else Donavir and Vipramukhya and all these people would get on your case, and they would browbeat you and harass you and, basically threaten your position. Prabhu, if you don't go along with our lie, we're liars, okay? We're selling used cars here that are a piece of crap, but we're selling them like they're low-mileage, brand-new cars. Okay, we're lying to everybody, but if you don't go along with our lie, then you have to leave, because you're going to be disturbing our business. We have a used car business here that's going good. We don't want you to mess it up. So that's basically what they did. They turned ISKCON into, a used Messiah program. Buyer beware. Watch out, because the guru may not be pure or whatever. So this was the seed whole idea of the appointed gurus. The appointed gurus never showed any documentation that they had been appointed. No documentation, no evidence that Prabhupada had appointed them. They didn't show us the tape. They didn't show us a letter. They didn't show us anything which would indicate concretely that Prabhupada had appointed them. Jayatirtha's position began to unravel very quickly because, he was just involved in one scandal after another. He was taking drugs. He was having illicit sex. And all that will be described in detail in another tape. So anyway, this is basically what happened to ISKCON in 1978. The 11 gurus declared, we're gurus. Most of the Prabhupada devotees knew these guys are not gurus. But they went along with it because they wanted to maintain their position. They knew that ISKCON, Prabhupada's ISKCON was now officially dead. It was gone, dead, finished, over. And a new religion was starting. It was the Jayatirtha cult. And you had to go along with the Jayatirtha cult, or you were out of ISKCON. Plain and simple. We're not going to worship Prabhupada anymore. That's gone, that's done, that's finished, that's a deviation. You have to offer everything to Jayatirtha. We're not going to offer the Bhoga to Prabhupada anymore. We're going to offer that first to Jayatirtha. Jayatirtha is going to have a Vyasasan in the temple. And we're going to be doing worship to Jayatirtha now, first. He is the current link in the parampara. So he gets the worship first. And all the other acharyas have to stand in line behind Jayatirtha. He gets worship first, and then Prabhupada gets worshipped, and this and that and the other. So Jayatirtha became more important than Prabhupada in their system. And this system was devised by people like Vipramukhya and Donavir. And this system is still going on right now. There's still, the food is being offered to all these different gurus now. It's not being offered to Prabhupada. That's the system that Donavir and Vipramukhya concocted, and it's still going on all over ISKCON. And recently, all the big GBC leaders got together in Mayapur. This just happened recently. And they made Radhanath one of their keynote speakers. Now, Radhanath was in charge of the whole Kirtananda enterprise when Kirtananda's program was engaged in all kinds of criminal activities, which it was eventually raided by the FBI and the federal marshals and all the rest of it. So It was a criminal organization, and Radhanath was the second in command of that criminal organization. So Radhanath is being glorified now as one of their main gurus. And, Radhanath buried Kirtananda in the holy Dham of Vrindavan and made a samadhi to worship Kirtananda. So Kirtananda is known to be a child molester, a homosexual, a pedophile, a child molester, an orchestrator of murder, an orchestrator of crimes of all different types. And he's being buried in the holy land of Vrindavan. So these guys, the whole Dhanavira Vipramukkhya plan was and is to have these deviant people become worshipped as saints, as acharya, successors to God, saints. Now another problem was that Sridhar Maharaj, who was the founder of the homosexual guru program in India in 1936, became the advisor to the GBC in 1978. The GBC went over there. They actually deputed Yashodanandan to go and speak to Sridhar and tell Sridhar that Prabhupada had wanted Sridhar to be the advisor to the GBC gurus. He had appointed these gurus and they were going to need advice. Sridhar was going to be the advisor to these gurus. So the first advice Sridhar gave was that when these gurus have problems and they fall down and there's some expose, that should be overlooked and no one should protest that. He said none should protest. So if these gurus are goofing off and doing bad things, none should protest. So we should just allow that to go on. So the leaders of ISKCON began to quote Sridhar Maharaj. Well, Sridhar Maharaj says none should protest, so no one should protest. It doesn't matter if Jayatirath is having illicit sex. It doesn't matter if he's taking drugs. It doesn't matter what he's doing. No one should protest. So this kind of cemented in the deviations. Now we weren't allowed to even speak out. No one was allowed to even criticize because right away they would say, but Sridhar says you can't criticize. So the more outrageous the GBC gurus became, the more harder it became for anyone to protest because, Dhanavir, Vipramukkhya, Sridhar Maharaj, all these people would gang up and just beat you down. You were not allowed to say, as soon as you said Jesus is pure, boom, you were out. Someone like Jesus is pure, bam, bam, bam. You got beat over the head, kicked with boots, and maybe beaten up and kicked out the door. You were not allowed to say the pure devotees are pure. That became forbidden. No one was allowed to do that. So this is what they wanted. They wanted to make a system where impure people were being worshipped, and because there was a lot of money to be made by doing that. Jayatirath was instantly a millionaire. And so Vipramukkhya and Dhanavir and these people thought, you know what, if I go along with this, eventually they're going to make me one of these gurus. I'm going to have my own franchise, and I'm going to become a millionaire. So people just jumped on board, thinking eventually they're going to vote me in, which is what happened. Vipramukkhya and Dhanavir and many others later on became voted in as gurus, and they started their own little guru franchise. So the whole thing just turned into a mundane guru business. And this is why when Krishna attacks the kingdoms of the demons like Ravana or Kamsa, he takes out not only those leaders, the demoniac leaders, but their supporters. Their supporters also go down as well, because the people who support this are almost equally implicated as the main perpetrators. Everyone is responsible. So to sum up, in 1978, the GBC declared that 11 people had been appointed as successors. No proof was ever shown of that. No proof has ever been shown of that. There is no appointment. None of these people were ever appointed. But that illusion or that lie or whatever you want to call it is still being perpetrated in ISKCON, that these guys, were the gurus, and then those gurus were able to appoint their successors, and so now there's 100 gurus in ISKCON. The first wave of gurus, as they were crashing on the beach in scandals and all kinds of criminal activity, they voted in a second wave, and so on and so forth. So the whole system was based on, and is based on, a big lie. There is no appointment of gurus in ISKCON. Never happened.